Yeah, now it's working. Right, thanks so much. We try new technology. So I introduce myself again. Hello, my name is Isa Janhke at the iSchool, School of Information Science and Learning Technologies in the College of Education here at MISU. I started last year in August, and I'm really happy to be here at MISU actually, and also thanks again for inviting me today. Before I start, I have a question to you. Usually I write an email in advance. I didn't do that, sorry, but my question is, what are your expectations when you read the abstract or the title? With what idea are you, did you or do you participate? What you want to hear, or what kind of ideas do you want to get from me, or what is your thinking? Just that I get a little understanding and I can a little bit react on it if I do that or not. Dante?
At least based on the title, I'm a little intrigued about some concepts about the cross-action spaces. To me, sound something interesting that I want to learn about, but I really don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but it's kind of some. It elicits for me something important for my learning.
Thanks. Other comments or ideas?
I thought you were going to give us ways of changing interaction in a classroom using little devices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I do not have prepared a typical research presentation, because I understood that we here talk about teaching and learning. So I have many different examples with me today what we did. However, and that is unfortunately, I did a lot in school. So it's our enterprise here together to transform the ideas from the schools to higher education. I did that already in my view, but I don't know, I'm not an expert in your field. I'm not a content expert in science. I mean, I was PhD student in computer science and had my master in sociology. You can see I have a kind of an interdisciplinary understanding. However, I'm not a physicist or biochemistry person. So probably we can discuss how you would transform or transfer my ideas, what I did in the past, what I observed, what I did myself in the teaching, and have a discussion about it, what you can learn from it, or what you think will not work in your field. That is also something maybe we can discuss, of course. Now I don't know how I actually, maybe with that one here, with the slides. Okay, no, that's okay. Okay, I was also assistant professor in higher education. So what I learned is you always should bring a kind of an introduction slide with you to create a funny mood on group dynamics here. So that is my introduction slide. Probably you have seen it. It's an old one from the internet. You can download it from that link here. So in a traditional classroom, we have the teacher in front, like me today, and the teacher is writing something, and then the teacher is seeing something. However, the students see something different, at least not the same what the teacher is seeing. And then what the students remember, whoops, what's going to be on the test, totally other idea, and what the cleaning person is seeing. So, and you can see a lot of different perspectives and views on what I want, what is my main message, and can you actually follow my main message? And as we can see from that little joke, it is, of course, communication is not a transferring model. It's a kind of, you make an interpretation what I am saying. And so that's the reason why actually this is the reality. So what we are doing here, and that is what I like here at MISU, is that we hopefully, when we have other forms of learning, not the traditional ones, not only the lectures, but also we expanding or amplifying learning through other ways of learning, in project-based learning, in meaningful learning, we hopefully overcome those problems where the student is engaged with content, where he reflects on content, where he even is the creator of content together with his peers or her peers, for example. So, and that is hopefully one message today, that we try with those kind of technologies, we try to transform learning from the traditional lecture into engaging the student to be active with the content, to understand the content, to reflect on it, and so on. You see with the examples what I mean with that later. So who has an iPad, iPhone, smartphones, tablet, or another web-based technology here on the table? Okay, fantastic. Maybe I can do it that way. Huh, great, thanks. Thanks. Okay, technology. I have to check which one. Okay. I go ahead. No. Nothing? No? Okay, I will stand here because I have some animations in the beginning. So some of you were inspired by the term cross-action spaces, and I would like to, as I said, it's not a research presentation, but to understand a little bit what kind of theoretical lenses I have on when I design for learning with technology. And so you can see a little bit, this is a kind of traditional classroom. We have a classroom here at school or university, or we have a seminar room or lecture hall here. And often, not today, but not nowadays, but 15, 20, 10 years ago, there was a wall between what is going on in such rooms like here and what is going outside in the internet world. And now with the mobile devices and having a flat rate 24 hours, 7 days a week, we are online everywhere. So this wall, it doesn't mean it doesn't matter where you are, in the school or in the university, this wall is blurring. So that is the idea behind that. So in a traditional classroom, in the university or college, we needed to go to that college because that was the only place to get access to information, libraries and schools and universities. There was no other way 20 years ago. Of course, we had newspapers, but to get a specific information, we needed to go to such institutions. So, and there was that separation of online. Okay, yeah, that would be nice. And and nowadays, it's blurring. Of course, we have still the physical walls here. You can see, I mean, we are right now in a room. However, with our communication, we are at the same time in different places. We are here, and we are connecting to or we have a kind of connectivity to that communication here, and we are on Twitter, Facebook, or wherever, and when we would get a notification, we can connect to that communication as well. And that is new. At the same time, being in different places is what technology is now enabling us to do. And some know maybe Niklas Luhmann. It was a really big German sociologist. He always, 20 years ago, said social systems, social groups like that here is made of communications. And people didn't understand what he meant. They said, we have physical bodies. Why is it communication? But when you now think about Twitter, that we are here and on Twitter, and we would get a notification, and you could connect to my communication and to the other communication, although you are still in the same place, but in different places, then you see that, yeah, a social system is a kind of a network of communication. You can connect in different social systems while you are in the same time, but in different places. And so that is the idea behind that. It's blurring, and the online and offline worlds are merging. It's Luciano Floridi from Oxford. It's an Oxford professor. He called it on life. He tried, or infosphere, trying to understand, finding new words for what is actually happening, and with those new words, making more clear what is actually going on also in the world of the university. So, and that means that getting access to information is still crucial, however, not that crucial. Instead, getting access to information and learning processes or other forms of instruction, that is a new way. And how can technology help us with that? And so that is the main idea of the cross-action spaces. So we interact like here, but we also have a cross-action. So interaction and cross-action. We are online and offline. And we have not only rooms or places, we're creating spaces like that, but while being online in spaces as well. And so that means, for example, in huge conferences, when that would be now online here, and I understood it's not online right now, but when it would be online and we had a Twitter hashtag, many other people could now join the conversation. You could read it on your Twitter account. That happened at least in my conferences and ACM conferences, where people Twitter using the hashtag while the speaker is presenting the slides. They are discussing already ideas. They even have questions in the end of the speech and ask questions. For example, I lately saw that a participant said, we discussed already in a Twitter group, and here's our question to you, dear speaker. So they already, and other speakers which are part, like you, in the room, but also in other rooms, and they are connecting. So that is, our interaction is expanding in a way, and that is the main idea behind that. The first idea of the concept is chapter 1. I'm happy to send it to you. Otherwise, I have the book here. It's more or less the same what I try to tell you. Giving a new name for a social phenomenon, what is still out there, or what is out there. And why is that so important to find a new name? Because when we have that name, we can talk about it. We can see the limitations, we can see the opportunities, the potential, but without having the name, we do not see that social phenomenon or social technical phenomenon. Yeah, it's, so we were in Finnish schools as well, and in Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and we asked the teachers there in STEM education, and they told us, dear Isa, it's clear for me, I know what you mean, when people have the whole world in front of them. That is what he told me when he saw the iPad and used the word cross-action spaces. And the important thing is here then that technology, like iPads, smartphones, wearable technology, Canvas, Blackboard, whatever, all kinds of web-based technology is not only a tool. And I know that some of you don't agree with me, and that's absolutely okay. What I want to say is when we see it as a tool, like a hammer, we miss the potential or the opportunity to understand whenever we use web-based technology that we change the way of communication. If we want or not, it's, for example, Twitter. It's only a specific number of characters which we can use, not now. Now it's open for, I don't know how many characters, but it was. So the communication is already coined by that form of technology, and it changes the way people communicate in the classroom or in the university or outside of the university. So it's not only a tool, it's also a tool, but it changes, and it's a kind of transformation. It changes the way of interacting, communicating, and of course it affects teaching and learning. Thank you. So now you can ask, okay, when we have those cross-action spaces, what is actually, how can we characterize human action? And a lot of things. It's not the list can be expanded here. Humans connect to each other resources. Think about George Siemens' idea of connectivism. It's no clear difference between offline and online. Go, for example, to the web-based platform where young teenagers share, actually in a setting like that, their music, and got a lot of online feedback. Of course, learners are creators. They discuss online, offline, and so on. And the example of huge conferences, I already gave it earlier. So and then, of course, when we know in cross-action spaces, the human interaction is expanding towards cross-action, then we can ask what is learning then. And one part, of course, could be we reflect about our cross-actions. So we are not only interacting and cross-acting and creating those spaces, we reflect about it. And that can mean reflective performance, reflective communication, or the reflective doing of such things. And then, of course, the other question would be, what is a reflection then? And reflection would be that we help our students when they are doing those cross actions to get resources, to get new information, to create new content, that we say, okay, reflection is that they can give us an understanding why they are doing it, what they are doing, why was that useful for them to do it, or to go to Twitter, Facebook, or whatever to create a new space, and why is this useful for their learning progress? So that is the idea. So cross-action space learning could mean doing a reflective cross-action. Thank you. I think that was it with the animations. I think now the next slide is without animations. And that is the last slide from the theoretical view, and then I have examples. So what we are doing is, so we see learning activities according to Howland, Jonas, Mara, and Al as a meaningful learning experience. However, when we are going to universities or schools and informal learning spaces, we ask about what is actually the teaching goal or the intended learning outcomes. It should be nothing new for you here, hopefully. We ask about how are the learning activities designed to reach those goals and outcomes. How is assessment be designed? Is it just summative assessment or formative assessment, or we call it process-based assessment, helping the students during the process to get feedback through peers, or self-reflection, or by teachers to get a lot of different kind of feedback with guided reflections. What are the social roles? This is the element number 4. How does a teacher design for the group dynamics? Does he or she focus on groups and how they can overcome problems in groups? Do they assign roles? Do the teachers assign roles to them and so on? And what kind of web-enabled technologies have been used? So these 5 elements in mind, we use this, and going then to the designed classroom and asking those questions, what have you done? So we can use that as a kind of an evaluation instrument, or we use it as a design instrument, designing something new from this perspective, having the cross-action spaces in mind. Okay. And then that is just an idea of how we use that in research. So we went, for example, to 70 classrooms in schools, but also in higher education. And then we had, on per element, we had a kind of Likert scale here. And this is, for example, teaching goals are not visible, and teaching goals are visible would be number 5. It would be summative assessment in the middle and formative assessment in the end. So we had a coding scheme. I don't have it with me. It's in the book, or I can send it to you if you like. How we analyze those innovative designs for teaching and learning. And then we can, per classroom, we can make a kind of figure per each classroom, what is happening, how can we make it visible to the teachers where their designs are. And then we can create discussions with them, or can create conversations. Okay, this is the red one is you. If you want to do that, that's perfect. But if you want to have another teaching goal should be more visible, then you get here feedback from the data. You should have better visibility of your teaching goals, for example. So it can help you for the teachers, or it can help you within the design, understanding, oh, the red one is not what we actually wanted. We wanted to be on the green one, so how can we expand, what kinds of elements, and how do we need to change our design to be on the outer layer? So that is what we did. And now I have a lot of examples. Questions, maybe, before I go into some examples. Questions, comments? Something you do not agree? Okay, just interrupt me, please, when you have questions or it's not clear. Okay, this is a program here where university and actually 2 different study programs, engineering physics and industrial engineering, and the second was interaction technology design, working together. So the teachers, 3 different teachers, and Eva Morell She was in my department when I was in Sweden, interactive media and learning. So 3 different teachers, 3 different study programs. And the students here from master students, graduate students, they created a design for school students. So the idea is they use Google Glass in that case. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring it with me. I have it here. I have, if you want to see it, another smart glass with me, Recon, if you want to try it. Otherwise, when you want to try Google Glass, please come to my office or I come to your office with the Google Glass. We can try it out if you want to. So we have right now here Google Glass and Recon, another form of smart glasses. And so what the students did, the idea of the course was that they create a design for a design. In other words, a design for students in school, 7th graders. And it was in a small town in Sweden, Umeå. And in that year, Umeå was a culture capital of, European capital of culture. And so the idea was that those school students should learn about the culture of that Swedish city. Umeå is really far north. It's like on the latitude like Anchorage. So it's almost in the Arctic Circle. I know, really cold and really dark in the winter. And so really isolated there. It's like, in that area, only 1 million people live there. But it's from the geographical size, it's, I think, 4 times bigger than Missouri. So you can see, and Umeå has 100,000 people, like Missouri, Columbia here, Missouri a little bit. But there's nothing around. So there's just a lot of reindeers around. And so they need technology. So Umeå really has a lot of technology. They would not survive in that isolated area without technology. So the idea was to learn about the culture of Umeå, what changed Umeå. And we have natives there, Sami people. And so they should learn about what are the effects for the native people there living in such a now more modern city. So, and they created, with the Google Glass, learning expeditions. So the idea was you can think about a kind of scavenger hunt. It was not a scavenger hunt, but the idea is game-based learning, gamification. So they had the Google Glass on, as you can see, both. And they got information. But she is only got part 1, and he got part 2. So they needed to communicate, to put the information together, to find the next location, to find the next clue, and then in the end to find out what is actually the solution of the riddle. And here it was a kind of tunnel where you can go through, and when they went through that, they activated a kind of interactive wall, some birds in the background were there, also in the virtual world. So they, through Google Glass, they saw these Swedish words, like here is a question for you, and please find out here with the interactive wall, where's the clue next. And learn about the pedagogical challenge was to create a kind of a goal where they learn about the native culture and connecting that to their own modern culture. That was the idea behind that. And for the school students, for the university students, the idea was, of course, to build a kind of an augmented reality app, so to find a technical solution together, and to find, of course, pedagogical solutions and other problems which occurred when you have a project-based learning project. Do you have questions? So a similar project now we want to do here. We call it Learning Expeditions at MISO, Lex MISO, or L-E-X MISO. I say always Lex MISO. And we started with Google Glass. However, to do the same idea what we did in Umeå, you need computer scientists or engineer department people. And right now, we are not funded. We do not have people to give money to it, so it's really not easy for us. So in case you are interested in joining us in that project with the Google Glass, please do it. What we are doing right now to make it easier, we use the iPad. I'm so sorry, I forgot my iPad today, but we have the Ares game. It's an app you can download on the iPad. Unfortunately, only working for the iOS devices. So that is, of course, a problem. Not all students have an Apple device. But the idea is we have 130 students here in July, 2 weeks. In that case, we have students who hopefully sign up to become undergrades, and we want to attract them here, coming to Mizzou and understanding the university from those idea of having an augmented reality tour here on campus. So the pedagogical idea is not only to make a scavenger hunt, not only to have fun at that day, that's of course important too. However, the idea is, for example, going to the columns and understanding how the columns, how they looked in the past. So we had a video and we found pictures. So when they go through the columns and have the iPad in front of them, the artists will, and they are close enough to the clue, in front of them they see on the iPad how the buildings and the columns looked like 150 years ago. So the idea is that, and then they have to answer some questions, what happened, for example, or other things. So they hopefully are engaged with the history on that location, and then they get another clue. So the idea is they should find Tiger Truman, and in the end, we have 13 different locations here on campus. They need at least to go to 4 of them to find out where Tiger Truman is, and then hopefully in the end we have Tiger Truman, our mascot here, that they have a party with them and a pizza party. But the idea is, from a pedagogical or social technical view, that they are in groups together, need to communicate through online, offline, and becoming a kind of community member, university community member. So the idea from becoming from Leif and Wenger, Jean Leif and Etienne Wenger, becoming from an outsider going into the circle to becoming an expert, that is the idea behind. We want to help the students to be engaged and learning what is to become a student, how does it feel to become a researcher at the university. And that campus tour is not only seeing the locations, it's learning how does it feel to be a student, what does it mean to be a student, and not, the university is often restricted to a place for learning, it's also a place for living. So how can we make that real for them? That is the idea behind. So and now I have a lot of, not a lot, but I have another examples with me with the iPad, and that is one of probably what is closely more to, not closely what you are doing, but maybe where you can connect the science education more than the others, is we had here students and university students together. With this perspective is from the school students. The school students here created new experiments in physics, and the other school students did that in chemistry, grade 9. And you can ask, how can we use that for our university here? We can transform the idea that they created totally new experiments, so they learned a lot before from textbooks or other things, or from the teacher, but then the teacher said, now you learned the last 5 weeks a lot, and I want you to show me what you have learned. And I don't want that you tell me, I want that you make an experiment. So they used the equipment in the lab, and they used the iPad for, like what we do here, recording it. And then what is so important is the recording part, because in all the cases, the experiment did fail the first time. So they needed the video recorded from the iPad, that product, to watch together with or without the teacher and discussing why went it wrong and what do we need to do that it will work the second time. So what is so important in that scenario, what they did in Denmark, is that of course they do an experiment by learn that failure is part of being a researcher and sitting together with the instructor or without. So some students said, we don't want the teacher. We are so smart, we want to figure it out on ourselves. And other schools, other groups said, we need the teacher. And it's important to be flexible. When the groups want to have the instructor, of course, it's important to have it. So, and then giving them the feeling, this is research. You fail. And then you reflect on it, you learn, and make those reflections visible on mind maps, for example. Here they used mind maps on the iPad, Poplet, I think it was that app. And then they shared it with their university students in their undergrads, which used the experiments for the next level, because these are really new experiments. It was not in the book. So it was not allowed to use an existing one. And then they put it on a YouTube channel and created a communities of practice. So you don't need school students when you do not want to get involved with school students, but you can have undergrads together with masters, or when you have 100 undergrads, you can just have different groups, creating communities of practice, creating experiments, letting them reflect online and using a YouTube channel. And when you do not want to share the YouTube channel, then it just restricts the YouTube channel for your group. You don't need to make it public. This was a European project, and I left Germany in 2011. And here we used remote labs from 3 different countries. We had Germany, Stockholm, Sweden, and then Italy, it was Palermo. And so the idea is that we have that was for students in all levels, undergrads, grads, and PhD students. So the idea is they can do an experiment through a remote lab. However, the different universities cannot afford to buy in engineering, all the different equipment. It's really expensive to buy all the equipment. So the Dortmund University people could go to Stockholm virtually, online, to say the roboter, okay, I want to check this kind of material in a tensile test. Do you know what a tensile test is? You know? A tensile test would be when you have a kind of material and you want to test the quality of your material, you put that material in that kind of technology, and then it pulls up and it pulls down, and sometimes at some point it will break, and you see and hear noises, you see when it breaks and how. And so this is really big. This is I don't know, the biggest, high like the room here. So it's really a big kind of a technology. And so the idea is they can say, okay, when you have, for example, lightweight planes, you need to check what kind of material can we use. So to build cars, to build all kind of planes, bikes, you need to know the quality. So for engineering students, it's really important to understand what kind of quality do I need. So the idea is for the undergrads, they got the idea having first a kind of what you know in Canvas or Blackboard, like theoretical backgrounds or readings and instructions. And then in the second, they can set up the experiment. And then again, the important here is, because they don't know what they are seeing, they got all the parameters online and how they set it up. So they see it, they get it back. However, what do the students learn when they are sitting alone in a room, seeing the experiment from Dortmund to Stockholm or to Italy, and seeing all the parameters? So again, the important part was, how can we help them to reflect on and making sense of that experiment? And so the idea was that they then, in the community, discuss the findings. Of course, it was recorded, the experiments. They could go back to it, and then they reflect the work using a wiki to writing the report. And so the undergrad started usually here. But some people, like PhD students, they know all the theoretical stuff. They could start with the experiment directly and to go through it. And others said, okay, I want first make the experiments and then want to go back to my theories and understand what I saw. So there are a lot of different possibilities there to get access to it. And the idea is here, it's made for the iPad. So you do not need to sit in front of your computer desktop. You can use it on the iPad. So, and now totally other topics. Educreation, have you heard about that app? Educreation is a screencasting tool. So you sit in front of your iPad. Sorry, it was in Sweden, Denmark, Finland, we all used iPads. I should say tablets, of course. So the Educreation, or also another app would be Explains Everything. This is another app, but both are screencasting tools. You're sitting in front of your iPad. You are writing something, or like here, or you have a digital painting in front of you, and that screencasting tool will record your different steps. So A and B, and it records also your voices. So you can, when I would like to show you something, I could record that on the Education app, and then you could see it how I, not only the end, the result, but also the way of how I started to make sense of the data, how I try to help you to explain. So in that case here, it is a Danish class. It was about words. What is a verb? What is an adjective? What is a noun? I know it's not domain what fits to your term, but you can think about having other terms in your field, having technical terms which your students need to know, or just another thing what they need to understand. So in that case here, they needed to show the teachers and the other groups what is a verb. How can I explain to you what a verb is, or a noun, or an adjective? And then they started to create those products, often 3 students together, and then later they presented that. And you can think about in presenting that in Canvas, Blackboard, having a face-to-face situation. A lot of possibilities are possible. And the other is similar to that. Yeah, thanks. The other is similar. It's just that is with math. So think about you have a math class. And this is, again, this was 2 graders, second graders. So it's not really what you can transfer, but what we can transfer is the idea. So think about there's a math formula, and students need to understand that, or a statistic formula. And how do you make sure that they did understand it? And then you ask, okay, can you have maybe an assignment for them that they need to use that statistic formula, and then they use that Education or Explains Everything app to make a screencasting, where they show step by step, okay, here's how I do it. Here's how I have done it, and so on. You go, they do it, and then you can look at the recorded session, and they, of course, they have audio recording with it, so they can comment why they are doing it, what they are doing, and you can then comment on it later if that strategy was a good one, or not.
So this sounds fascinating, but your recording is information, and when it comes time to grade, that's a lot slower than me skimming through written reports. And I'm not learning how to write during the talk, so I appreciate that students can talk better than they can write. But what's the trade-off there in terms both of the students not learning how to actually write, and also for the graders? I mean, I can look at 10 students, 15 minutes recording versus skimming. I can skim written paper. I can't skim videotape.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's my
Absolutely. No, that is a really good question, because my answer is always, I would never skip all the writing. All the ideas I give you is try to change something slightly in your course. So have, I don't know, 80% writing, but have one element with the screencasting tool. You can even say in the end, when you have a project, they should use it, where they should incorporate that in their projects, so that you have not only that, so that you have the writings in the beginning and maybe that in the end. But I never would say just do it just with that app. I sometimes use the word balance, but what the balance is for you depends on what kind of teacher you are. So, for example, I started with using it just once in my course, and then maybe when I feel committed or I feel comfortable with it, I would maybe expand it. But I agree, it's more time like how to grade it. It's actually absolutely more time. And that is a trade-off. That is a design trade-off. That is a term from Gerhard Fischer, a design trade-off. We always have to think not only what is the design trade-off for the learners, also, of course, for us teachers. And so we need to make decisions. And when we want to change lectures or the traditional classroom to those more innovative things, we don't need to skip everything, but we can incorporate smaller elements. And the more and I absolutely agree to you that we need to find other forms of grading, because the existing traditional grading systems we have, maybe when we have in 10 years or 5 years other forms of grading for those digital tools, like we have video-based grading systems, probably there is something out, then it's so much easier for us teachers to incorporate that thing. And so that would be so, I think there will be a lot of going on in the next years that we have videos where easier for us to comment on it as teachers and to grade videos or so small screencasting tools. Yeah, so sorry, I have no better answer, and just it depends what you want and a little bit if what you, how you feel and how comfortable you feel with testing something new. So again, not your domain, however, the idea behind it is what I found fascinating. Mark, you mentioned it. Sometimes or often we ask our students to, that they write something. We ask them, please show us what you have learned by writing. But writing is just, that is what I learned from the last 3 years in Sweden. Writing is just one element where learners get the opportunity to show us teachers what they have learned. There are many other ways, and that is unfortunately right now, I would say, an obstacle in universities as well to overcome the writing. I mean, we need writing. I don't want to skip it at all, but I think we should expand the opportunities for learners to express themselves in other forms too. And that is one app. It's called Book Creator. And later on, I say something about the book trailer. Book Creator is an app, and that is an example from a first grader. I know, it's not our domain. However, you see the idea. That person in first grade read a book. And of course, they don't read the books we read, but with a lot of pictures in it, of course. But they do understand maybe smaller words. So they wrote smaller words about the book here. So the assignment was, make a review about the book in the first grade. And here are some words from that student. And then, of course, the student cannot express only themselves or himself or herself in writing. So he or she painted something. And then he or she recorded also her voice and to make clear what if she likes the book or if she doesn't like the book. So from that class we learned in research, sometimes it's easier for students that you give them choices. Sometimes you say, okay, here now it's important you write. But in the next assignment, you can choose. Do you want to make me a video? Do you want me to paint something? Do you want to make a screencasting? Do you want to make a book trailer? Book trailer is like a theater trailer, a kind of a 2 minutes putting some pictures together and creating a short story. That is a book called Book Trailer. It's in the iMovie app. So when you have one assignment where the students can choose, probably 90% will choose to write something. But sometimes there are students which are not good in writing. Maybe they have that, I don't know the English word, they have a lack in writing the right words correctly. I don't know yeah, thank you. So and then they are happy that you help them, that they can express themselves in other words. So what we have done in research is we asked those, we observed a classroom where the assignment was open to the students, and some did choose to make pictures and other things. And that had a really positive group dynamic within the classroom. And students said, wait a minute, that person who is always shy and never writes and never say something, she or he was so, because she made a painting and the other person made a video about Vikings, wow, they learned so much, they know so much. So suddenly the teacher, as well as the other peers, they said, oh my gosh, they are part of our classroom. They got a totally different view on that shy person. But when you just had the opportunity to offer them writings, they were still the shy people in the back. So the other really appreciated that they could express the learning themselves. So that is one big thing. And of course, I don't want to say we overcome all writing in research. That, of course, we still have papers and books the next 100,000 years. However, having having in some assignments the opportunity test it with your students and see how they, if they like it or not. And the problem is, however, when you do videos or when you ask the students, please create a short video or screencasting tool, you need to give them rules. Like you give them rules when they write. They have a kind of structure. And otherwise, you will get a mess of a video, and they need, of course, some instructions, what you want from them. And it doesn't matter what kind of medium they would choose. Okay. Yeah, we can skip that. I can come to the end. Oh yeah, you see, we had in Umeå also a telepresence robot. So like a Skype on wheels, the Big Bang Theory Sheldon thing. And this is just, I wanted to share with you that we test a lot of things. We never came up with a good idea for teaching and learning. So instead of course, when someone could not be here, we could have a telepresence robot here. And what we learned is when you have such a robot here, and you see the real face here, you see my face here, we learned in the group, instead of having him or her on Skype, when you really have an artifact with a real face on the desk, you really see that person as if the person would be really here. So it's a different having him or her on Skype or having him like he can, or I could actually use my head. So it's really like a kind of a hybrid robot, and that created another group dynamics. Yeah, we can skip that. I think we are. So what I want to say, actually, you can go to the other slides, thanks, is that design, when you have new technologies and you want to create innovative designs, do not start with thinking, where can we meet? What we often do in lectures. We say, okay, every Sunday or every Tuesday, we meet. And so everything's organized around that meeting. But when we think with technology, it's more, what is the process? What are the teaching goals? What activities can we actually design? What roles do we need, and so on? So try to think about what is the process, and then think about when do we meet? When do we have to meet? Where can we meet? Online, offline, and so on. So that is a little bit what I learned from the innovative designs in Sweden. Thank you. I think we can skip the rest here. Yeah, this is just, I had something with me about creativity, but we have already or almost 1 o'clock, so we should go ahead and for your questions.
So what do you see as far as, we've got all of these applications, we have all of this technology available, but people are very slow to adopt.
Yeah,
so obviously
I know.
very hesitant to use it in their
Yes.
classrooms. I know something we deal with in my office, the biggest thing is people aren't willing to take the time to learn how to do stuff. And so how do you overcome that? How do you overcome that in your experience?
So first of all, I don't know if you know Rogers, the diffusions of innovations. So when we here now would see who is more the early adopter or the innovator, that means who is willing to take over the new technology and test it, then probably here we would have a lot of early adopters and innovators. Otherwise we wouldn't be here, I would assume. But when we ask our peers, maybe Roger said in his empirical studies, we have the innovative and the early adopters, and then we have the early majority. And when we have those three groups together, we have 50%. We have then the late majority and the laggards or laggards. And you never will reach, when it comes to new technology, the last group. So do not start there. You never will convince them because they don't want, or they don't. So they don't want, but because of a lot of different reasons. But don't try to convince them. Start with the other three groups. And Roger showed that when we have 50%, it's kind of a wave. Then it will go over, or it will take over through the late majority. And then we hopefully have all the 60, 70%, but never all. So again, the question is, how can we convince the innovators and the early adopters? We don't need to convince the innovators because they are those people like you here. You have already ideas, you just test it, you want. How can we convince the early adopters? And that is that they need resources. That is resources in terms of time, or resources in terms of colleagues, often what for example, now I use Canvas, and I started here in Missouri, and I was so happy that I had instructional designer. Although I know that thing, I'm a researcher in that field, I was so happy to have a person where I could reflect and discuss my ideas and learn something just to have a kind of a coach, you can say. So you need a person where you can walk through your ideas together with. And then, of course, you need a climate in the department where you can test something, and when it went not well or it will not go well in the end, you never know in the beginning, that those leaders say it was it was worth testing it. So there are a lot of different kinds of organizational prerequisites we need that we convince the early adopters really to test it. And of course, resources like giving money to something is also nice, but time, having colleagues, working in a team, having the idea of I can test something new, I think that is most, yeah. And we tried in Sweden, Denmark, we tried to use those innovative and early adopters. In Denmark, there was an interesting case from the leadership, so it was top-down and bottom-up. It was the leadership where she made a kind of theoretical concept, what is the goal for our institution? And she said, okay, I want to focus on the innovators and early adopters. I will help them. But also I would give them a kind of a theoretical frame where to go. Not just to test something, but...
What we're, particular case we're dealing with in Kafner is ag engineering got $1 million to design these project-based classrooms. And the one I'm in charge of is fully equipped with iPads. It has a 3D printer, it has everything under the sun. You can do anything you want in this classroom. But what we struggle with is it's come to the top, you've got to use this.
You must identify the teachers who are willing to work with you.
Only got one.
It's good. You start with one. You start with one. You make a fantastic project. It will be a kind of a lighthouse project then. You can like here invite him or her to those meetings, going with him or her in his experience or her experience to the other teachers. Try to convince those you identified as easily to convince. And so try to find out more people you want to. I think it's a lot of communication. You need to go to those people and try to convince them, not via email, not face-to-face, but phone, and trying to convince, let us test something new. I need your expertise as a subject professor, or I don't know, and so on. So try, this is exactly the way you start. And when you have 1 or 2 people in the first half year or year, you will convince others.
So it's been about a year, at least. So that's like a normal timeline.
Yeah. Yeah, in Denmark it takes 1 year. It took 1 year in Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and that was 1 year for that kind of innovative testing, exploration field. It was 1 year. After 2 years, a lot more teachers started to join, and in the 3rd year it was normal, and now it's normality for them. But it takes time.
Because I was just getting a little concerned.
Yeah.
I was going to say, time is a big issue. And for me, a new technology, if it's not intuitive, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I don't want to learn a new system. I don't want a new system. And just as you were helping with this thing earlier on, right? You spend 10 minutes with that camera. If that's me in front of a classroom, I turn it off, I use the blackboard, because I can do it. So if I have intuitive directions that work, I'm going to look on it. If I have a new system, if you guess, on Blackboard, a little pull down arrow, my mouse over it.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
if I can't find it, I'm not going to go there. I just say, okay, I give up.
I just reply, or?
Take the directions more clear for the person using it. We have something that works right now. To put this time to figure it out. And you know like a PLE, right? So if I'm struggling on my computer to find the right place to go to the option work. I don't like the PLE.
Yeah, these are, of course, something we cannot affect, but of course, usability tested equipment would be nice. And then, in your case, I do agree, people like you helping me here to set that thing up is for when you want to convince teachers working with you, tell them you will be there, or a person or a colleague or will be there and help them with the equipment. That is actually really important. So that was also important in Denmark. They had, in the Danish schools, they had And also in University with Eva, the Google Glass project, we had an expert person always with us. It's not to underestimate how important it is because the teachers are so much relaxed, or more relaxed at least, when they know there is a person who helps them with the technology. That is another absolutely crucial thing. And then, of course, just tell them not to do it once, because the first time you have a lot to work with. When you do it twice, 3 times, and so on, you continue to create a new normality, then it's so much easier for the teachers to see the benefit. But when you just do it once, it's so much more effort, and you at least do it twice. That is another.
Well, we want to thank Dr. Janhke, and I appreciate her encouragement in trying new things because it's really tough to do that.
I know.
And,
It's the same for me, actually.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Well, we really appreciate you coming today, and the winner of our book is Anna. So, thank you for coming. Well, there's pizza if you want to grab something to go.
Thank you. That button. That button.